Hello, my beautiful psychology students. Yes, we're here to do a little bit of exam question time. Yes, I'm sure you're excited about that. Right, these questions we're doing, you're going to be self-marking in week 7. We did a collection of research methods questions. These are the ones you're going to be self-marking. Now, if you handwrote this, or if you typed it up on the computer, please use either a different color pen or a different color font, because I'd like you to mark each one using the exemplar answers. I want you to give it a mark and a justification as to why you awarded it that mark, right? So I want you to tell me why you gave yourself that mark. Don't just say, because it had everything in it. Come on, I want a nice clear justification why. So let's start with question 1. Nice multiple choice question. Which of A, B, C, or D best describes the study? Now, big hint here in exams. Take your time to read and understand the STEM, because the STEM will answer this question. Because by reading the STEM, you will be able to work out what type of experiment it is. Now, think about it. The teachers are already going to this course, this training course. So it's something that's already happening. It's not been set up. It's not been manipulated. So yes, there's only one answer, and that is C, a natural experiment. The teachers would have gone on the course whether this research was done or not, so a natural experiment. But again, you would only pick that if you take the time to read and understand the STEM. STEMs are really important. Next one, a little bit of maths here. What fraction of teachers thought their confidence was better after the course? Show your workings. So you've got to give an answer, but you've got to show how you got to that answer. If you don't show how to get to that answer, you're not going to get the second mark, right? So it's really important. Use the data, work out how many teachers there are in total. Quite straightforward. We know 16, 2 and 2, so it's 20. We know there's 20 teachers in total. We've got to work out the fraction of teachers who thought their confidence is better. So 1 mark for your workings, right? So we've got 16 over 20. 4 can go into them both, right? So 1 mark for doing this. So, and then 1 mark for your answer, 4/5. We don't leave it at 16/20ths, not 20, sorry, because we've got to make it to the most simplest form of the fraction. And that's where you show your workings out. So 4 into 16 goes 4, 4 into 20 goes 5, so that gives us 4/5 for your answer. Question C. What might the researchers conclude about the training course on the basis of the data in the table? Explain your answer, 2 marks. So we've got to make a conclusion and we've got to give a justification. That really is what's going to get your 2 marks. 2 marks for a clear and coherent conclusion plus relevant explanation based on the data. So we've got to include the data. 1 if it's vague or muddled. So conclusion. The training course appears to have a beneficial effect on teachers' confidence. There's a solid conclusion. Explain why, as the majority of them, 16 out of 20, say their confidence has improved. A justification why, an explanation to explain our conclusion. So straightforward, you need a conclusion with an explanation of it. Question D. What is the operationalized dependent variable in this study? 2 marks. Now, again, it's about understanding the STEM and also understanding what we mean by operationalized or operationalized. That means it's turned into something real. So that means we've got to use the real dependent variable. So you get 2 marks for a clearly operationalized dependent variable. For example, the DV is whether the teachers thought their confidence in managing difficult behaviour was better, worse, or the same after the course. If you did something along the line, so it's you haven't fully operationalized it and just said something like teachers' confidence or how they felt after the course, it's too vague. So, but it is saying that basically we are measuring their confidence level, but it's not been fully operationalized. So it's really important to fully operationalize. Again, you'll find it in the STEM. E, which experimental design is being used in this study, and why would it be appropriate design in this case? 3 marks. You get 1 mark for the experimental design and 2 marks for an appropriate justification. Remember, that's why. Why is your justification? Repeated measures. Again, you will get that from working out the STEM, because they got them to do the questionnaire before and the questionnaire after, so the same person, so repeated measures. And plus 2 marks for a clear, coherent explanation as to why the design is appropriate in this case, or 1 mark you'll qualify for a vague or muddled explanation as to why this design is appropriate in this case. So we've got 2 marks on this why. 1 mark, why did we choose this one? And 2nd mark, why wouldn't we choose another one? That's a way to go with this one. It is important to ask the same participants to consider their level of confidence before and after taking part in the training in order to see whether their confidence has changed. Nice mark. We've got to use the same people. It would not make sense to ask one group of people before training and another group of people after training, because there may be individual differences in their levels of confidence anyway. So our justification why it wouldn't make sense to use, 2 separate groups. 2 marks. 1 mark for the design and the 2 marks for the justification. Justification, you'll find that in the question because it says why. Question F. The psychologist conducting the training decided to use the sign test to see whether there was a significant difference in the confidence in managing difficult classroom behaviour before and after the course. Give the calculated value of S in the study and explain how you arrived at this figure. Okay, 3 marks. 1 mark for the calculated value of S, and 2 marks, explain how you arrived at this. Now, so it's really important that you understand the word how. We've gone over this word so many times. They do love it in the exams. You'll find it in a lot of questions. Remember, how. What would they, in this case you, do? How did you do it to get to that calculated? So what did you have to do? So you would get 1 mark for saying S equals 2. Quite straightforward, right, with regards to it. And 2 more marks for any of these 2 type of things that you could have mentioned. 1, they had to work out the differences between each score from the conditions of each participant, right? So the differences, right? Or you could include it for another mark from these differences, add up the number of plus and the number of minus signs, and the lowest total would be your calculated value of S. Another things, if there was any nil differences, they are ignored. Now, if you look at the table, you've got 16 people that believed that their confidence had increased, 2 believed it had increased. So actually, we've got 16 positives and 2 minuses. So 2 would be our smallest. The ones that said it hadn't changed would actually be our zeros. So it's you just thinking about it. That's how you get your S equals 2. Okay, let's move on to question G. Explain why statistical testing is used in psychological research. Quite a straightforward. Explain why. Why are we using it? We're not explaining what it is, we're explaining why we use it. So 2 marks for a clear and coherent explanation, 1 mark for a vague and muddled explanation. So researchers use statistical tests to determine the likelihood that the effect or the difference or the relationships, you don't need to write all of those, just one of them would do, they have found has occurred either due to or not due to chance. This allows them to accept the correct hypothesis. So technically what this is saying is it allows them to actually see whether they prove or disprove their hypotheses, right? And remember, you could have mentioned here that they need to be at least 95% correct. And that's why they use the testing, so that they can see that they're at least 95% correct, and only 5% of chance could have come in there as well. H suggests 2 behavioural categories that the researcher could have used during his observation, 2 marks. Now, here we've got the part of the stem from the question. Again, when you get a stem, make sure you read it with regards to, now, we've done behavioural categories. Remember when we did attachment and we looked at the strange situation and I got you to draw a tally sheet and we looked at different behaviours that we could have. All it's asking you is to suggest 2 behaviours. You don't need to explain them, just suggest them. So these aren't big answers. For credit, the behaviour should be an observable behaviour. What that means is real behaviour, things that you can actually see, that is disruptive or disobedient and would be likely to occur in a primary school classroom. So don't just suck things out of the air. Think about, you're in a primary school classroom, what would we call as bad behaviour? You need to think about, so things like throwing something, shouting, banging on the desk. It needs to be observable. It needs to be real. 2 of those will get your marks. You know, hair pulling, shouting, screaming, right? And this one, so quite a straightforward, easy answer. Actually, you could have just wrote there shouting and talking back to the teacher, throwing pencils, anything like that would have been fine. I, design a tally or record sheet that the researcher could use to record his observations, 3 marks. So you've actually got to design a tally sheet. So you could draw it, right? Straightforward. They're looking for 3 key things in this tally sheet. The table must have spaces for the recordings or the tallies where they can mark every time they see the behaviour. So it has to have that. There needs to be separate spaces for the first and the last 10 minutes. So you need to have 2 divisions for those 2 areas. And then you need headed correctly with the 6 different spaces. Now you don't need to include a behaviour in each one of them, but you need to have 6 spaces because remember they were looking for 6 key behaviours. So an example is here. You can see when we look at it, we've got one, I've just put in 4. You could have just put in the 2 that you used in question before this, question H, right? You could have used just 2 of them, but you need to have 6 of them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, because there were 6 behavioural categories. Here we've got first 10-minute tallies, we've got space to tally it, last 10-minute tallies, and we've got space to tally it. You need all of these areas in order to get your 3 marks. J, I think this is our last question. Identify one problem that might have occurred during this observation and explain how the observation would be improved by addressing this problem. So identify an issue and how will it be solved? How would you fix it? Again, there's that lovely word, how. Explain how it could be fixed. What could you actually do to fix it? So I've given you 3 different little scenarios, but remember you have your grade boundaries next to it. You've got level 1 and 2. To get between 3 to 4 marks, a relevant problem is clearly identified. The explanation of how the observation would be improved by addressing this problem is appropriate and effective. The answer is generally coherent and with effective use of appropriate terminology. So that's what we're looking to get those 3 to 4 marks. So one answer, observer effect. As the observation, right, is over, this means that the pupils would behave differently because they are aware that they are being observed. So we've identified the issue, we've explained what it is, how we will deal with it. Could be addressed by carrying out a covert observation, right? So the children are unaware that they're being watched and you'll get to see more natural behavior. Another one, observer biased or I've put there lack of objectivity because the researcher is working alone. That is a problem. If there's only, remember we spoke about this when we looked at Ainsworth, that you'll always have more than one person observing because they could be biased because it's only based, the data is only based on what they have seen, and actually it could be quite biased. This could be addressed by working as part of a pair for inter-observer reliability. right? That means at the end you can compare results to see whether you've got similarities. Another one, limiting observations to the first and last 10 minutes means that the data may not be valid I'm getting tongue-tied, representation of disruptive behaviour in lessons. That could be a problem because you're only seeing the start and you're only seeing C. You're not actually seeing what's happening in the middle. So you need to carry out observations at other times during the lesson too, to see whether the disruptive behaviour escalates, or if it only actually occurs in the first test. Maybe it doesn't occur in the middle, but we'd never know that. Maybe we don't see much disruptive behaviour at the start. You get the drift what I'm saying. Now, what I want you to do now is I want you to work through the video, pause, look at your answer, annotate if you need to improve it, give yourself a mark, give yourself a justification. Once you've done that, you're going to be emailing me your marked work so that I can mark your marking. And on that happy note, my lovelies, talk to you soon.